our guest lecturer. But first, I want to give you some announcement. One of the announcements today is we have a workshop with workplace. It's a mergers and acquisitions workshop, and you can apply. And the workshop is in the Frankfurt office of Barclays, and it will start at 17th of November. Your application should be submitted until 17th of November, and the workshop is on 27th of November. So I recommend you apply. It's a big chance to meet mergers and acquisitions of executives, and you can present yourself, and you have a very good chance for an internship or other graduate programs. And so I will give this round here, and please let it circle. And you can see the information on our website, gfa-frankfurt.org, and we have another event this week on Wednesday with R&B insurance, a company presentation, and then we have the next week also more events. And I want to say you one event date. We are thinking on Christmas, and we have our Christmas party from the GFA on December the 10th, and you can come to our Christmas party. It is also in the House of Finance. So, today we want to discuss another leadership approach we had. The last time the style approach, and you had some basic styles in the style approach. Today we want to discuss some ideas about leadership and motivation, and I will bring you some ideas about leadership here. Leadership is the ability to influence, motivate, and enable others to contribute in direction of effectiveness and the success of the organization. Very big topic and house, and all our researchers there are researching about the transformational leadership approach. And another interesting quote is the ability to start revolutionary change processes that are more adaptive. Or I have another leadership idea or leadership approach. Leadership is defining a path and harnessing people. This is a quote from Sir Karl Raimund Popper, one of the social ethics and philosophy researchers of our days, from 2011. Or another one that's very important also for our guest today. Leadership is a process, or these are tools of giving purposes to collective efforts. We will come later. Now, there are some fundamental practical leadership elements. What do you think are some practical elements of the leadership? We have some approaches: skill approach, style approach, trait approach, discussed in our last lectures. We will have more in the next lecture. But what have you in your idea as fundamental practical leadership elements? What do you think? Any idea what could be a fundamental practical leadership element? What do you think? You. I will repeat the question for you. What is the fundamental practical leadership element? What do you think? For example, an element, a factor. What could be a factor? A fundamental leadership factor. A fundamental leadership factor could be, for example, power. Power. Expertise power. Personal power. Charismatic power. Power. This could be a leadership element. Another leadership element could be what? What do you think?
That you can convince and influence.
Yes, convincing. Okay, convincing is very good. Convincing, do you have maybe another area? Convincing. What could be another general expression? Commitment. Committing people, for example. Commitment. Commitment is one of the also fundamental practical leadership elements. Commitment. If you have an idea, you want to reach a project, you want to reach results, your leadership task is to buy in your followers, to have the commitment of your followers, to negotiate the goals for your project with your followers. That means commitment. Commitment. Another one, we have 4 practical leadership elements found out in general research. Number 2 is commitment. Number 1 is power. Number 3, what could be number 3?
That you put the 2 things.
Okay.
You're good in communication.
Communication.
Yeah, and that you would strive for getting people to develop themselves.
Okay. To support people thriving or developing their own skills, behaviors, characteristics. There are some tools to build up personal characteristics. We will hear later some practical visionary ideas to build this up. Networking could be networking. If you say communication, communicating, then a practical leadership factor is the ability for networking. Number 3. What could be number 4? Number 4. What is your idea? What could be number 4?
Have a clue? What is it?
Yeah, you can have, what is your idea? Practical idea.
I guess integrity?
Integrity. Yes, integrity is absolutely important. Insight. Insight in the organization. Insight in organizational work chains. Insight in information. These are some fundamental practical leadership elements, and they are belonging very strong together. I will show you here. I will show you a slide about the relationships between power, networking, insight, commitment. All these factors are depending. Now, we want to come to an idea about leadership, leadership approach. It is the visionary leadership and the motivation. Leadership and motivation. And we will later hear a lot of these relationships and the tools about. A leadership style focused on effecting revolutionary change in organizations through a commitment to the organization's vision. This is a part of a visionary leadership style. What have these leaders? What are the characteristics of these leaders? The leaders with a visionary style, with a visionary motivational behavior, these leaders have the ability to clearly articulate a vision of the future, of the idea how they see the path to the future. future. These leaders are the myth makers. They are the leaders which are the storytellers. They can tell us stories for their visionary power. And these leaders with visionary power, with visionary leadership and motivational tools, these leaders capture us. They capture our imagination with very lively or vivid descriptions of a wonderful future they will build together with the followers. And we will have examples of projects, social projects, other projects. And we will hear later from the practical and the visionary side. Now we want to come to another point in visionary leadership. We have talked about building up steps for a vision. What are the characteristics of visionary leaders? What are characteristics of visionary leaders? What do you think? Characteristics of a visionary leader. Do you have an idea? A characteristic of a visionary leader. Let me know. What do you think? Innovation power. Okay. Innovation power. Additional characteristics.
Independent thinking.
Independent thinking. Yes, independent thinking is very interesting. Independent thinking. Other one?
Conceptual.
Conceptual thinking. Yes, if you think on our skills approach, that is a part of the skills approach. Human, technical, conceptual thinking. Yes, leaders and followers raise one another, and that's important, to a higher level of motivation and morality. If you talk about leadership, I recommend talking about ethical dimensions of your leadership, social dimensions, social responsibility of your leadership. And these leaders have the characteristics of empowering others to achieve something, to achieve a shared vision. They are sharing information, a shared vision. And they believe in people. They believe in the good in the people. They believe in good characteristics in the people. And these leaders with these characteristics fosters followers the desires for higher values, higher morals, higher humanitarian ideals. They are value-driven. And we will hear about some wonderful projects where we have the reality about this. And these leaders commit people to action. They buy people in for action. They adapt action. And that's very important, as a very important characteristic in my belief. These leaders with the visionary leadership, with the motivational behavior, these leaders convert followers into leaders and change agents. And they make the followers to ambassadors of their ideas. And these are multiplication effects in the company, in the organization, and in the society, if you want, if you have it on a broader level. And these leaders are courageous. These leaders are courageous, role models. So we have in the transformational leadership approach four important elements for leaders. And these elements are charisma, or you can say idealized influence. Number one. Number two is the a way of inspirational motivation, inspirations. And another one that's very important is the factor of transformational leadership, intellectual stimulation. So we have number 3, and there are 4 factors which are describing this visionary transformational leadership approach, which has a bigger result than maybe other approaches. It is individualized consideration. So we have 4 so-called I's, and these 4 I's are, as I mentioned, charisma, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individual consideration. I will give you some characteristics of this point, individual consideration. What is individual consideration? What is the leader's behavior in individualized consideration? How does the leader act? How is leadership described, defined in individualized consideration? Leaders are in this case mentors. The leaders are coaches. The leaders attend to the developments of their followers. Absolutely important leadership task to develop your followers. To have a pool of new talents in the future. You can have this in the organization, in company, in sports, in athletics, everywhere. And these leaders are providing a supportive environment in new learning situations. And these leaders are able for delegating. They are delegating personal, appropriate tasks to their followers. And there are, and that's absolutely also important if you're thinking on the entrance of the office of a leader. These leaders are available, and these leaders are accessible to their followers. They are not working in a tower in the top, they are working between their employees. And they have the challenge of the employees, and they are open-minded. Individualized consideration. The transformational leadership, this approach is at the moment a very popular approach in leading with visionary elements. So, now I want to come to our guest lecturer. It is really a really big pleasure and honor, and I welcome my guest lecturer, Bruce Silverglade, from New York City with his wife. I welcome you officially now in the Goethe University Frankfurt, officially in Goethe Finance Association, and official welcome in the House of Finance to your guest lecture from today. I will give some ideas of your CV, your biography, but this is a very big biography. I will point out some points. I cannot describe all of your wonderful characteristics and your great supportive ideas and ideals, and you are a person which likes people. Bruce Silverglade is a bachelor, has a bachelor degree, and he was a top executive in CS Roebuck, and that's very important. He has a lot of tasks to change maybe society sometimes, and he has a big heart and big activities in athletics, in sports, and he's the owner of the most famous gym in the USA, in the world, Gleason's gym, and this is one of your big tasks, and in this task you are a speaker. He is a speaker in Harvard University, he is a speaker in New York University, he is the lecturer in New York University, and he speaks in the Chinese universities, and he speaks all over the world. I know in the next weeks you are traveling to China and everywhere to give speeches about leadership and motivational factors from your view, from your daily work. And Bruce Silverglade has a lot of founding projects. He is the founder of the Brooklyn Dumbo Arts Festival, for example, and he is the founder of social and charity projects, Give Kids a Dream, for example, and he is a very lively and vivid example of leadership and motivation, and therefore it is a great welcome to Bruce Silverglade, President Bruce Silverglade from Gleason's Gym Incorporated, New York City. And now I want to give Bruce your auditorium, and welcome once again, President Bruce.
Ich habe nur euer komisches Entrepreneurship, euer Business Model.
Okay. But first, now we have a special effect. Okay, so now comes another welcome, which is in the context, and I will give you this welcome. Some of you will know this welcome greetings, and these are the people which have been attending our GFA Athletics October 28th, and here is the welcome. Hello, welcome Bruce, welcome Joe Allen. It is a pleasure for me to welcome you in our boxing gym, and it is a pleasure for me to have you in my lecture with your guest lecture. We are all from the university in Frankfurt and France for me, and we are practicing boxing and we like boxing, and we know that you are one of the great names in boxing in the USA and worldwide. Thank you and have a great lecture. Thank you very much, Bruce.
Thank you very much. It's an honor being here. My name is Bruce Silverglade. I'm the owner of Gleason's Gym. Gleason's is the oldest and the largest boxing gym in the United States. I want to thank Frankfurt University, and particularly Professor Harry Trummer, for inviting me here and giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I'm going to tell you the story of Gleason's gym. I'm going to tell you about some of the athletes that have trained there and their inspirational stories. The story of the gym and the many champions that have trained there is those of an individual, people that have had dreams, and what they've done with those dreams to make themselves successful. The people I'm going to speak about are exactly like you today. They have dreams and they have ideas. You have dreams and ideas. Same concept. Peter Robert Gagliardi wanted to have a boxing gym in New York. The sport was dominated by two giants. A place called Stillman's Gym, which was where everybody trained. If you were a fighter of any level, you trained in New York City at Stillman's Gym. And the place where you boxed was Madison Square Garden. So Madison Square Garden and Stillman's Gym were the two giants of boxing in New York City. But Peter Gagliardi wanted to have his own gym. So he started out as an underdog. He was going up against two giants, but he figured he wanted to have his own place to train fighters. He was a fighter. He started out in the early 1900s as a boxer, and he realized that he could make money doing something he liked. So boxing was what he liked. He stopped boxing at an early age and started to train boxers and ended up managing over 100 fighters. So he needed his own place. He wasn't going to go into what everybody else did. He was his own man. He wanted to train his own people. But again, he was a tough nut. There were a lot of obstacles. First of all, he was an Italian. And the boxing scene in New York was dominated by the Irish. In the area where he was opening up the gym in the Bronx, New York, was a predominantly Irish neighborhood. So he had to use some smarts, and he changed the name from Gagliardi to Gleason's. He called it Gleason's Gym because it was Irish. It was going to be a success to get into the Irish crowd, and he literally changed his name to Bobby Gleason. So the gym became known as Gleason's Gym. It was a smart move on his part because everybody then started to come into the gym. Not only the Irish, but everybody else that was involved with boxing would come into the gym. Still, the times were hard, and we had a lot of obstacles. It was 1937, the Great Depression was just ending, but there were a lot of financial problems, and Bobby couldn't meet all his bills. The people that were members of the gym paid $2 a month for membership. His rent was $50 a month, but at the time it was very difficult. So he did what he had to do. He would run the gym for 8 hours during the day, and at nighttime, he decided to drive a cab. He was a cab driver for 8 to 10 hours a night to make money to keep the electric on at the gym. So you have to do what's necessary to overcome your obstacles. One of the other things that he did was very smart. He surrounded himself with the best trainers in the industry. And this is something you have to do. Whatever organization you go into, whatever you want to build, make sure you get good people in that field. Get good advisors. Listen to what they have to say. Don't worry about pride of authorship. Don't think that someone else is taking your ideas. Listen to what other people have to say. Get the best people possible around you. Listen to what they have to say, and then take the ideas from those people that you like, and the ideas that you don't like, you can dismiss. But if you surround yourself with good people, you'll do very well. Listen to the people. Bobby's approach to boxing was different than any of the other gyms in the city, and particularly Stillman's. He took a Spartan approach, a fatherly approach. He wanted to build fighters. He wanted to build an institution where fighters could go to. He wasn't interested in making money at this point. So if a fighter couldn't afford the $2 monthly dues, he didn't kick him out of the gym like most people did. If you couldn't afford it, they sent you out. Didn't care about it. But Bobby wasn't doing that. He wanted to create a gym for fighters that he could develop all levels. Most of the fighters that go into the gym aren't money makers, they're not contenders, they're just startups. But he wasn't about to throw them out. He wanted everyone in there, and it became a very big success. The sweat that they flowed in the gym made Bobby a boxing champion. Not only the players were champions, but he became a boxing champion. Everybody loved him. Everybody knew what he was doing. So the gym stayed in the Bronx for 37 years. And then the building that it was in was being torn down for a housing project, and he had to relocate. So after 37 years of a successful gym in the Bronx, he relocated to Manhattan. He was on the corner of 30th Street and 8th Avenue. It was a major location right next to Madison Square Garden. He continued to run the gym in his efficient way, bringing in the best fighters and the best trainers possible. When he was ending his career, he was awarded the James J. Memorial Award for long meritorious service in boxing. It was the highest award possible. And Bobby Gleason, coming from nothing, coming from an Italian background with an idea, built it into the largest and most successful boxing gym in the United States. And he did it through hard work, through management, through listening to other people, and from sticking to his idea. He didn't want to listen to other people. He wanted his own gym and was successful in doing it. Things eased up after the Depression, and boxing flourished in New York, and so did Gleason's gym. The 40s and 50s were a very good time. There were good fighters, there were a lot of fights going on, and it was a very successful time. The 60s came around, and things changed. Depression came back, there was a big recession. Madison Square Garden was closing down, Stillman's closed down, and only Bobby Gleason's gym remained. So it became the center of boxing in New York. So this gentleman that started with nothing surpassed all the other monuments in boxing, all the other major areas and institutions faded away, but because of his approach, because of his dream, he was able to make it successful. The gym grew in stature. Many great fighters started to train there. Local heroes like Jake LaMotta, Phil Terranova, boxed their way to championships. This was the gym. This was his original gym up in the Bronx. It was a small place. It had 2 rings. It had a lot of seats for the spectators to come up. And it was an institution in boxing. And the hours were long. They started at 8 o'clock in the morning and went to 10 o'clock in the evening. And this is the place that built many, many world champions. Okay, this is one of the first champions. This was actually his second champion. His first champion was a fellow by the name of Phil Terranova, who he actually managed and became the first champion for Bobby Gleason. And this was his second champion. This is Jake LaMotta and his brother Joey, who was one of his trainers. We're going to talk more about him a little bit later. There have been 133 world champions that have trained at Gleason's gym. 133. Okay, right after Jake LaMotta, this was Phil Terranova, the first world champion. This was when Jake LaMotta won the world title. He beat a fellow, a Frenchman by the name of Marcel Cerdan in Detroit in 1943. He became the world champion. A movie was later made about him called Raging Bull. We'll discuss that. But this was Bobby Gleason holding LaMotta on his shoulder. Again, he was the manager for LaMotta. And this was a woman by the name of Vicky. That was his wife. And looking at the ages now, I'm not sure who saw the movie Raging Bull, but she played a very prominent part in the movie. Okay, next, was Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali came into Gleason's gym when he was still known as Cassius Clay. He won a gold medal at the Olympics. He was a very good fighter. However, he had a big mouth and talked a big game. He was trained by a fellow named Angelo Dundee, who was a very good trainer, a well-known trainer from Philadelphia. However, he later moved to New York and trained people out of Gleason's gym, so he was aware of Gleason's gym. And he finally moved to Miami. And when he started training Cassius Clay, he was in Miami, Florida. And they were training down there. Then the opportunity came for his fight against Sonny Liston. And Sonny Liston was the champion at the time, was a real monster. And no one gave Muhammad Ali an opportunity or the odds to win this fight. They thought that he would actually get hurt in this fight. But he upset the world and became the youngest world champion at the time, and continued to come back to New York. The first time he came back to New York, he changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, and continued to train at Gleason's for most of his career. Okay, when the gym was moved in 1974, Bobby Gleason had to pull up stakes and move from the Bronx when the building was torn down for a housing project, and he moved to this address in Manhattan. It was the first time in New York that a gym was located on the first floor. You were walking from the city streets, and it was very successful. Also, Bobby ran the gym the same way. He had this Spartan approach. He liked the fighters, and he continued to let the fighters come in. And those that could afford the dues paid the dues. Those who won championships certainly contributed to the dues, and those that could not were still allowed to come in and train. Again, one of the very important things about Gleason's gym, one of the reasons why it became so successful, is that it continued to have the top trainers in this sport. Okay, this gentleman, Wade Bimstein, is working with Rocky Graziano here. He's probably the grandfather of all boxing trainers in New York. Along with him, we had Freddie Brown and Ray Arcel, also two fellows that are renowned in the sport of boxing. They came with Bobby from the Bronx to Manhattan, and so the quality of the trainers brought new fighters in, and then the new fighters that won champions brought more trainers in. So it was a continuous cycle of good trainers bringing in good fighters, and good fighters bringing more trainers in. Okay, one of my favorite champions is a fellow by the name of Roberto Duran. Roberto Duran, when he trained at Gleason's gym, most Manhattan turned out for him. The Midtown South, which was our local precinct, had closed down the street. There would be so many spectators coming in to watch Roberto Duran. He's from Panama, and he had a tremendous Spanish following. So everybody would come into Gleason's and watch his training. Okay, Bobby Gleason passed away, and there was nobody in his family that wanted to continue the business. So fortunately, there was a New York businessman by the name of Ira Becker. He was very successful in what he was doing. He was involved in the space age and early rocketry, but he loves boxing. When he went to college at the University of Alabama, he became a national collegiate champion. So he always liked boxing, and it was always in the back of his mind. When the opportunity came to purchase Gleason's gym, he did so. He was a big advocate for boxing safety and uniform regulations in the sport. He tried to get regulations passed, which was not really that successful. Because even today, in 2014, there are very few rules and regulations in boxing. In the United States, each state has its own rules and regulations. Each country has rules and regulations. So the rules in France are different than the rules here in Germany, and the same with all the other countries. In addition to that, there are sanctioning bodies. Those are the bodies that declare world champions. For example, WBA or WBC. Each of those organizations also have their own rules and regulations. So you can box in a 20-foot ring in France, come over to Germany and have to fight with a 24-foot rifle. The rules and regulations are different. So back then, Ira Becker was trying to get things uniform. He was very successful in safety, but he did get a lot of rules changed. He was instrumental in getting championship fights changed from 15 rounds to 12 rounds. And they felt, for medical reasons, it was better to have a shorter fight because most of the injuries were taking place in the later rounds of boxing. So he was instrumental in getting it short. Manhattan, this is Ira Becker. Picture of Ira. He ran the gym. Okay, Gleason's is the home for not only good boxers, but for Hollywood. Hollywood screenwriters come into the gym. We continue to write stories about boxing. I think that the single most written about topic in Hollywood is boxing, other than love story. There's no love story around, but there's been over 100 boxing films made. 36 of them have been made at Gleason's gym. But actors come in all the time. We've had Robert De Niro for Raging Bull. Jennifer Lopez has come in for her movies. This is Hugh Jackman with Sugar Ray Leonard, who was in practicing for one of his movies. Okay, the opportunity in 1983 arose for me to make a partnership with Ira Becker. I was working for Sears Roebuck and Company, which was a retailer, and at the time it was the largest corporation in the world. But I wasn't happy. I was unmotivated. Didn't like what I was doing. I went to school and I graduated from Gettysburg College, and I have a degree in economics. And I decided that I didn't want to follow my father's footsteps. I was born in Trenton, New Jersey, and my father ran a sports program for the city of Trenton, New Jersey. He's instrumental in developing a company called Police Athletic League. Police Athletic League is called the PAL, P-A-L, and it's sponsored by a police department. So my father was instrumental in making the National Police Athletic League available in the country. However, we lived in Trenton, New Jersey. He ran the PAL. The PAL is not only a multi-sport program, but it's for individuals of any like. If you like sewing, they would have sewing classes for women. If you like soccer, you would have soccer classes. But my dad's specialty was boxing. He was the United States team manager for the 1980 and 1984 U.S. Olympic teams. It was great growing up in the house. We had athletes over all the time. It was always a lot of fun. Once I graduated, I figured, I'm my own man. I'm going to do my own thing. I was to follow in father's footsteps. So I went to work for Sears. I was recruited at college, and I became a manager for one of their stores. I was with them for 16 years. I had a lot of people working for me. I had a nice salary, but I didn't like what I was doing. So when you don't like what you're doing, it doesn't matter how much money you make. You're just unhappy. So I called my dad, and I said, I'd like to get involved with boxing. So she made some calls to New York, and I got started as a referee and judge, helping out the kids in an amateur program, amateur boxing. So there was no money involved. I was making my living with Sears, but I was enjoying my life with my hobby in boxing. And because I was a referee and a judge, I was enjoying myself, but I found a conflict. I liked the fighters too much. And I would take the fighters out to eat and drive them to the contest and drive them home. So it was very difficult to referee them and judge them when they're competing, when you're friendly with them, and you take them out to dinner. So I decided to get into the administration end. And from the administration end, I eventually became the president of amateur boxing in New York City. On a national level, our Olympic headquarters were in Colorado Springs, and I worked as the national chairman for our Junior Olympic program, which is our developmental program. So I was having a lot of fun working with the amateurs, and one day I walked into Gleason's gym and had a conversation with Ira, and he mentioned that he was looking for a partner. And the next day I went to Sears Roebuck and I resigned. I took my profit sharing and I became a 50% owner of Gleason's Gym. And it's something that I never look back on. I enjoy it every day. I think I have the best job in the world. I get to go places and meet people, which I would not have done if I was working at Sears, but I certainly do because of the sport of boxing. What it gets down to is you have to do what you like. If you want to be successful, if you want to be a leader, if you want to get ahead in the 21st century, do what you like to do. Don't do what other people want you to do. Don't do what your parents tell you you should do. Don't do what your professors tell you to do. Don't do what your roommates tell you to do. Find out what you want to do. Come up with your dream. Come up with your idea. And then follow your idea. And don't take no for an answer. There's going to be hardships along the way. You just overcome them. You know, when one door closes, you go to the next door. You open the doors until you find what you want to do. That's how you'll be successful. You have to do what you want to do, follow your dream. Okay, this is a quote from Muhammad Ali. It says, "The only limitations one has are the ones they place on themselves." This is true. Think about it. The only limitation you have are limitations you put on yourself. Back then, I had a wife, I had 2 children, I had 2 car payments, I had a mortgage, but I was unhappy. So it didn't mean anything. Get out of being unhappy. Make yourself happy. Now, people think that change is impossible. This is another quote from Muhammad Ali. "Impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Impossible is not a declaration, it's a dare. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary." Think about these words. Everything in that statement is true. Going back to the gym, we're now on 30th Street. The building went for sale. They were there for 10 years, we had a nice lease, everything was going great, nice location, and a new owner bought the building. And at the time that we were in Manhattan, we were the only tenant in a 17-story high-rise. But the building was sold and it was turned into co-ops. One day the landlord came in and asked me to go up to the roof with him, to the 17th floor, which I did, and you could hear all the rattle from the gym. You could hear the noise of the speed bags, the noise of the heavy bags. So it was apparent that we couldn't stay there any longer. So we had to look around, and we came to this location in Dumbo. Dumbo stands for Down Under the Manhattan Bridge Overpass. What it means is it's by the Brooklyn Bridge, on the Brooklyn side. It was some place that we didn't want to go to. Manhattan was always to us the center of the universe. It's where we wanted to be, where everything was taking place. And we had to move to another area. However, back in 1984, there was another recession going on, and we couldn't afford anything in Manhattan. So we looked around, and this area wasn't Dumbo at the time. It was a desolate area under the Brooklyn Bridge. There were no streets, there were no sidewalks. There was one other business other than Gleason's, and there were a number of squatters. Squatters are people that live in vacant buildings and don't pay rent. Most of them were artists, but these were vacant buildings, and they were able to live there at no charge. So we were talking into it, and the biggest factor for going over there was the rent. It was very, very inexpensive. It was something we could afford. So we moved there, and we figured we'd make the best of it. So we opened up this gym. It's 15,000 square feet, about 12,500 square meters. It was a boxer's paradise. There were 5 rings, many heavy bags, all the equipment that's needed to get yourself into good condition. Gleason's offers a cultural and metaphorical link between many different eras. Okay, the boxing is the oldest and busiest gym in the world, but the venue serves as the unofficial headquarters for the international press. There's not a day goes by. 7 days a week we're open now. We're open from 5 o'clock in the morning to 10 at night. Not a day goes by that I don't have media in there from somewhere around the world. They like the atmosphere up there. They like the fact that it's old. Okay, it's not modern. It's an old type of gym. And one thing that you have to realize as an individual, you make yourself a champion. You make yourself a good athlete. It doesn't matter what kind of equipment you have. You have old equipment or you have new equipment. It's immaterial. It's what you have inside of you. It's going to make you a good athlete, a good champion. On any day in Brooklyn, you'll find a number of champions there. As I said, we've had a total of 133 world champions. People like Mike Tyson has trained there, Zach Judith trains there, Paul Malignaggi, Floyd Mayweather. I'm trying to pick some names out that you might recognize because of your age in here. We've got an awful lot of champions that were there before you were born. But I hope some of you have heard of Floyd Mayweather. He's an American boxer who's ranked #1 in the world right now. Just as a little aside, whatever field you're going to go into, a boxer, one boxer, Floyd Mayweather, has been offered $50 million to fight one fight. Okay, the fight lasts about 50 minutes. Okay, his opponent, from the Philippines by the name of Pacquiao, was also offered $1 million to fight. So whatever field you're going to go into, I'm sure it's a good field. But if you like boxing and you're good at it, you can make a lot of money in boxing. All these champions have tremendous personal stories. Most of them come from your lower socioeconomic areas. Most of them aren't highly educated. There are exceptions. Obviously, you have the Klitschko brothers. They have PhDs. There are other fighters today that have learned that education is very important and they get more degrees. But most of the kids that go into boxing come from your lower socioeconomic areas. They have dreams like you do. They have ideas and they want to get out of poverty. They want to get out of the projects that they're in. So they go into a boxing gym. That's their gym. Okay? Most of them don't go to college. They don't go to high school. So they don't go into your traditional sports. They're not tennis players. They're not swimmers. They're not soccer players. You go into the sport of boxing. Mike Tyson trained at Gleason's gym. Mike Tyson has a lot of good stories. Some I can get into, some I can't. But one thing I want you to know about the sport of boxing and how it helps people. Mike Tyson today, with his reputation and with all the things that you've read that he's done in the past, is an award-winning author. He has a one-man stand-up show which he goes around the world making money at. He's an active promoter. He's been in the media, he's been in television shows, he's been in Hollywood. If it wasn't for the sport of boxing, he'd be dead. He would have died on the streets of Brooklyn as a tough kid. But the sport of boxing has brought him along to the point where he's made a lot of money, and he's a successful family man now. It's boxing. This is Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather was offered $50 million to box one 12-round fight. This is the gentleman I want to talk about. This is Yuri Foreman. Yuri Foreman is one of the 133 champions that came to Gleason's gym. There's a story that is worth hearing about. Okay? He was born in Belarus, and he was taking up swimming as a youngster. But he was getting beat up in school, and kids were after him all the time, so his mother switched him into boxing. At the age of 7, they relocated to Israel. He loved boxing, but in Israel, there weren't a lot of gyms. So he had to go to an Arab gym. Okay? When he entered the Arab gym, there were a lot of stares, a lot of hatred. But he was a good athlete, and he persevered. And they became teammates, so there was a camaraderie. They traveled together. Fortunately for Yuri, he was able to win more times than lose. So there was a good camaraderie there. He went on to win 3 Israeli amateur titles. But he had a dream. What he wanted to do was move to New York City and train at Gleason's gym, and then hopefully become a world champion. So at the age of 19, with no family support, no money, no friends, just himself, he left Israel and came to New York to follow his dream. Okay? Came into New York, and I met him. I listened to his story, and I was fascinated by this young man that would get up with no help, no support system, and just come to New York to train at Gleason's gym. So I brought him into one of my programs called Give a Kid a Dream, and we let him train there. In 1999, at the age of 19, he started training. 2 years later, he won an amateur championship called the New York City Golden Gloves. It's a huge worldwide tournament. It's second in size only to the Olympic Games. He became a champion. In 2001, he turned professional. In the beginning, he didn't have a good management team, and so he had a lot of hardships financially and training-wise. But through circumstance, I was fortunate in getting him a new management team, and they were able to get him the proper fights, and he became a contender. In 2009, after 10 years, he won a world title. He beat a fellow by the name of Danny Santos, who was the ranking and current world champion, and he beat him. He came to New York as a kid with nothing except a dream, except a desire. He didn't let finances bother him. He didn't let anything bother him. He had a dream, and he followed his dream, and he won his championship. He also was fortunate enough in meeting a young woman, a Hungarian model, a very nice looking lady who was an amateur boxer, and they got married, so he met his wife there. And today, he's studying to be a rabbi. So he's going to be the only world champion that's a rabbi, and he's also the state of Israel's only world champion. So he had a dream, he followed his dream, and he met his dream. He didn't let things stand in his way. Boxing and Gleason's have become synonymous. Over the years, the reputation of the champions had produced Gleason's gym with a worldwide appeal for excellence. Another boxer that's a good example is a fellow by the name of Danny Jacobs. Danny Jacobs was born in Brownsville, Brooklyn, a very depressed area, and he was very talented as a boxer. So he won most of his amateur fights. He had an amateur record of 137 wins and 7 losses. He won the majority of the amateur tournaments that he went into. He was living the life and really realized that he was going to be a world champion. He was going to get out of poverty. He was going to get out of Brownsville. And he was raised by his grandmother. He didn't have a family. His grandmother was raising him. And in July of 2010, he got the call to fight for a world title. He was fighting a fellow by the name of Dmitry Krylov, the current world champion who was Russian. And he got knocked out in the 5th round. It was his first loss. So again, that would devastate a lot of people, especially when you're not used to losing. To get knocked out is a big deal. Right after this knockout, he was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, which is an aggressive type of bone cancer. It latched up to his spine. He had paralysis. He was in the hospital. So things certainly weren't going the way he wanted. People thought he was dying. This is a kid that had a lot of highs in his life. He was a very good fighter. He was the prospect of the year. when he turned professional. He was living the high life on his way to winning the title. When he got the chance to win the title, and he got that first call, which is what he wanted, it was his dream, 5 days before the fight, his grandmother, the woman that raised him, passed away. So he was devastated. His mind wasn't into the fight, and he lost. He got knocked out. Then he's diagnosed with cancer. The doctors told him he would never fight. He couldn't walk. He had to go through rehabilitation just to learn how to walk again. So the doctors told him, that's it. You're not going to fight anymore. You're not going to realize your dream. But Danny wasn't going to buy it. He wanted to be a champion. He wasn't going to let anything stand in his way. So after going through a number of operations, chemotherapy, radiation, getting released from the hospital, the day he was released from the hospital, they brought a social worker, encouraged him to his bed and told him, go home, you're never going to fight again, good luck to you. Danny wasn't buying it. And on August 9th of this year, he won the middleweight championship of the world at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. This kid, again, he didn't let somebody tell him no. Don't let people tell you no. If you want to do something, if you have a dream, follow your dream. If there's an obstacle in the way, find a way to go around the obstacle. You can do it. Every one of you in this room can do whatever you want to do. It's up to you, from the inside, to do it, to want to do it. Today at Gleason's gym, we not only have amateur fighters and professional fighters, this is when Rory won the world title. This is Danny Jacobs. Good looking kid, had everything going for him. Came down with cancer. Doctor tells him he's not going to fight anymore. He showed him. Showed everybody. He proved to himself that he could do what he wanted to do. He won a world title. But today, most of the fighters in my gym, about 60%, are businessmen and women just like yourselves. They're in there taking up the sport of boxing, the physical training, getting in a great physical shape, but also the mental training. The mental training is very, very important. So this is a German model. I don't know if anybody will recognize him or not. He came over to Gleason's to prepare for an amateur competition here in New York. I'm sorry, in Frankfurt. And he trained at Gleason's gym. The fellow that he was with is Juan Laporte, who was one of our world champions. He's now a trainer there. So the gym is made up of 67 nationalities. So like this room, people from all over the world, like in New York City, very cosmopolitan city with people from all over the world. The boxing gym is also made up from people from all over the world. 67 nationalities are currently training at Gleason's gym. My youngest competitor, my youngest pupil, is 6 years old. My oldest is 83. So again, there's no excuse. You can't not go into a gym. You can't say I'm too old, I'm too sick, I'm hurting, I'm tired. You know, they're all excuses. Don't have excuses. Go into a gym and start working out. This is one of my youngsters, one of my oldsters. This fellow, who is 73 years old, is still boxing. I have competitions for people that are called master boxers, who are a little bit older, and I have fantasy camps. And he's an attorney from Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is in the middle of the United States. He flies into New York and competes on our shows. This gentleman, Mike Shepard, is one of the new type of boxers. He's a businessman. He's actually an iron worker. and he wanted to be a New York City fireman. So he had to pass a physical test. He decided to come into Gleason's gym. He knows the moving kind of worked out. Would get him in great shape. So Mike came into the gym, started working out, getting ready for the medical, the physical, and he had an accident on work. And he broke his ankle. So he had an operation done, and they put a metal plate in his ankle. So continues to come into the gym, rehabilitates, gets himself in great shape, and takes the physical exam at the New York City Fire Department, passes it with flying colors. Number 1, number 2 in his class. His conversation with the doctor, he has a female doctor, in conversation with the doctor, he mentions that he has a metal plate in his ankle. So she immediately tells him, you're out. You can't have any type of an implant, particularly a metal implant, and be a fireman. It just won't work. So again, it's a hardship. But he had a dream. He wanted to be a fireman. What did he do? He had a voluntary operation and removed the plate from his ankles. Goes back, becomes a fireman. The ironic part is that on September 11th, 2001, he was one of the brave responders, first responders that ran into the World Trade Center. And after the first tower collapsed, he was in trying to rescue people. And there was a woman that was trapped in the rubble. And he pulled her out and saved her life. And the woman turned out to be the female doctor that told him he couldn't be a fireman. The irony of it. But what it gets down to again is that if you want to do something, you can do it. Don't let anyone tell you no. When there's an obstacle, go around the obstacle. In boxing, there's one goal. We train everybody, these 6-year-olds, we train everyone the same way in boxing. Okay? Whether you're a 6-year-old, whether you're an 83-year-old, it doesn't matter. Whether you're a business person or whether you're a person that comes in the gym to win a world championship, we train you the same way. We get you in a condition to fight a world title fight, mentally and physically. Then you do it with it what you want. If you want to compete, we'll assist you competing. If you don't want to compete, you don't have to. You're just going to have great physical training there, which will help you. Not too many people in this room have high blood pressure or cholesterol yet, but you won't have cholesterol problems. You won't have high blood pressure problems if you're an athlete. You get into boxing and you train the way an athlete, boxing athlete trains. So boxing is 50% mental, 40% conditioning, and about 10% ability. The 50% mental is very, very important. It's what's important for you to be a leader in the 21st century. You have to concentrate, you have to focus, you have to know what you want to do. You have to be smart inside the ring and you have to be smart outside the ring. Inside the ring, it's a chess game. You have to know what moves you're going to make, you have to know what move your opponent's going to make, you have to outmaneuver them and be one step ahead of them. You have to have a game plan. And you have to follow your game plan, not your opponent's. He's going to have a game plan also. But you don't want to follow your opponent's. It's like a dance. The man that's dancing, you lead your partner. That's what you're doing here. You want to lead when you're in the ring. You have to follow what your game plan is. Don't follow your opponent's game plan or you're going to lose. Your opponent's going to do everything he can to get you off your game plan. You see at weigh-in time, buckets, people argue with one another, they try to start a fight. They're trying to get under your skin. They're trying to get you off of your game plan so that you'll follow their game plan. Once you get mad and you just want to kill the person, you can't think. You're not going to follow your game plan. Don't let that happen to you. When you have a game plan, when you decide what you want to do, you said follow. Follow your game plan. Don't let other people come along and tell you what to do. Follow your game plan. You also have to be very smart outside the ring. You have to watch your habits, what you eat, what you drink, when you have sex. whatever your habits are, you have to watch them. If you're going to compete and you want to win, you have to do the right thing. You have to do everything it takes to win. You can't go halfway. If you have a trainer, and the trainer tells you to run 4 miles, you have to run 4 miles. If you only run 3.5 miles, you're going to create doubt in your mind. When you're sitting on the stool, waiting to go into the fight, you're going to say to yourself, why did I not run 4 miles? Why did I only run 3.5 miles? Why did I have that extra food? Why did I have that extra drink? Don't do things that are going to create doubt. Doubt will make you a loser. If you just open that door a little bit, you're going to be a loser. So don't do that. If you have a trainer, and in boxing you have a very close relationship with yourself and your trainer. Your trainer is going to take you into combat. So you have to have a lot of faith in your trainer. If you trust your trainer, you have faith in your trainer, and you've done everything he's told you to do, you're going to win. No doubt about it, you're going to win. If you have doubt, you won't win. You're also going to have fear. Fear saps your energy. The adrenaline rush that you have when you go into the ring will sap your energy. So you have to work extra hard. You have to be in such great physical condition that you overcome the fear, that you overcome the anxiety that's in there. Work hard, you're going to overcome the fear. Now, Mike Tyson's trainer, Customato, was a very good trainer during the last century. He trained many, many good world champions. The one that you know, obviously, is Mike Tyson. And he has a quote about fear. The hero and the coward both feel the same thing, but the hero uses his fear, projects it onto his opponent, while the coward runs. It's the same thing, fear, but it's what you do with it that matters. Think about that. What you do with the fear that matters. Fear is a good thing. It protects you. You use it properly. I'm going to give you an example of fear and what fear will do. In 1988 in Atlantic City, 2 undefeated champions were going to box. One was Michael Spinks. Michael Spinks was an Olympic champion. He was a lightweight heavyweight champion for a number of years. He turned heavyweight, and he was the ranking and current heavyweight champion. Mike Tyson was coming along. Mike Tyson was in his prime. He was known as the meanest and the scariest man on the earth. And he won most of his fights because the opponents were afraid of him. This fight took place in Atlantic City, both undefeated. Everybody thought that Tyson was going to get his first loss because he was fighting somebody really good with a great background. But Tyson won. Tyson won before they got into the ring. In 1 minute and 31 seconds in the first round, Michael Spinks was knocked out. It's because he froze. His fear got to him. He wasn't able to do what he wanted to do. He was a great champion. He was an Olympic champion. He was a light heavyweight champion. He was a heavyweight champion. But he let his fear overcome him. And he lost. He lost in 1 minute and 31 seconds in the first round. So listen to what Customato says. Do not let fear hold you back. Be courageous. Proof is that once Mike Tyson lost, he had a fight later on in Japan, and he lost. He got knocked out. Many reasons why he lost. He wasn't into it mentally. He wasn't into it physically. But he lost. Once he lost, he had a losing record as a professional fighter after that, because the athletes were no longer afraid of him. So most of his fights that he won, although he was a tough, ferocious guy, people were afraid of him, so they couldn't compete. Once the athlete was in there and could compete against him, didn't have that fear, they were able to win. So it's the same thing with you. When you go into your new business, when you go into your new idea, you're going to have fear. You're going to be afraid of what's coming up. Don't be afraid of the fear. Use the fear. Use it to your advantage. The second part of being a good fighter is conditioning. You have to be in great condition because, again, in a championship fight, you have to be in as good physical condition at the end of the fight as you are in the beginning of the fight. And you can't put your hands down and rest. It's not soccer where you're in a part of the field and if the ball isn't in your part of the field, you can rest. In boxing, you have a gentleman or a woman 2 feet away from you, 2.5 feet at most away from you, trying to throw punches at you, trying to hit you. So there's no rest. You have to be in great physical condition. Remember, you have to be able to think when you're in there. We talk about being on your game plan and thinking. Well, towards the end of the contest, if you get tired, you're not going to be able to think properly. So you can't allow that to happen. You have to work hard. You have to train hard. You have to be able to think at the end of the contest, just like you do in the beginning of the contest. And who does that? The champions, the leaders, the people that want to win. Not the people that tell you they're going to win, but the people that actually put in the sweat and the hard work. If you want to be the leader of your industry, if you want to start a new position, if you want to be a winner, you have to work for it. It doesn't come easy. But if you work for it, you can succeed. The last part of boxing is the 10%, the ability. Okay, when your opponent, when you get into the championship round, you get into a gold medal round, your opponent's in good condition, and he's a smart person. So now you need a little bit of ability. So be careful of ability. Natural ability quite often is a detriment. Natural ability can hurt you. If you don't have to train and you can beat your opponents just because you're smarter, or just because you're older, or just because you have some natural ability, and you can go into a contest and win the contest without doing your homework, without doing your basics, it's good for a while, but at some point it's going to catch up with you. When it catches up with you, when you go in with a more mature fighter or a talented fighter, you're going to lose because you didn't do your basics, you weren't properly prepared. Once you lose, you're going to become discouraged. Once you become discouraged, you're going to quit. Don't let that happen to you. Be prepared. Do your ABCs. If you're a student, and you're a good high school student, and you have natural ability, and you've got a good mind, and you don't study real hard, and you get some good grades, by the time you get to your level, it's a lot harder. And if you didn't do your basics, you're going to have a much harder time at this level than you did in high school. I know it firsthand. I was a terrible student. I was unmotivated. So I didn't do so well. I learned. And I learned what you have to do. You have to do your ABC. You have to do your basics. Okay. In 1987, when all these businessmen and women were starting to come into the gym, I had to do something to keep them in the gym. Boxing is a very addictive sport. You start to feel good about yourself. Your clothes feel better. Your health feels better. You walk up and down the steps without breathing too heavy. And I said, well, what's next? What's next? In boxing, the next logical progression is to compete. Is to spar, to compete. So I had all these businessmen, and I needed them. It was tough economic times, so all these businessmen that were coming in were making it possible for me to pay my rent. Keep the gym going. So you have to figure out innovation. How do you keep your business going? What do you have to do to correct things or change things to keep the income coming in? So what I did, I started an organization called White Collar Boxing. What White Collar Boxing is, it's for fellows that are a little bit older. They're not amateurs, they're not licensed amateurs. Amateurs in boxing are people that fight in the Olympics or a national championship. It's an actual category. It's not somebody who's new to the sport and they say, well, I'm an amateur. An amateur is an actual category licensed by amateur boxing. It's worldwide. It's called IEBA. Each country then follows the rules of IEBA. Germany follows the same rules that we do in the United States for amateur boxing. I went to this group and I said, listen, I have a bunch of men and women in my gym that want to compete, but they're not amateurs, eligible to be amateurs. They're too old. And the amateur organization in the United States said no, they weren't interested. Their mandate was to get kids into the Olympics. I said, all right, fine. I I then went to the New York State Athletic Commission, which is the governing body in New York for professional fighting. And I asked them if they would sanction businessmen boxing, and they said no, it was too costly. So I decided to start an organization. It wasn't actually legal, but I started an organization called White Collar Boxing. This is Carl Lewis. Carl has a quote there, if I can find it. Basically, what Carl Lewis said, he was a great runner, great sprinter. He said that if you do not have confidence, you will always find a way not to win. This goes back to when I was talking about doubt. Don't doubt yourself. Have confidence. You'll be a winner. This is one of our businessmen. He turned out to be a white-collar boxer. He's a judge in the state of New York. He's also boxed 57 times all around the world. I brought him on boxing shows throughout New York, throughout the United States, and over to London on several occasions. This is what white-collar boxing is all about. It's get businessmen in great condition, also can be business women today, they fight, get into great condition, and they do an amateur bout. Okay, it's a licensed, sanctioned show. No one gets hurt, and they go in there and they compete. And they have the same emotions as a professional fighter. And when they approach the fight, they have the same fear, the same anticipation, and they get themselves in a great physical and mental condition. And it helps them in what they do. It helps them in their everyday life. If they're a student, they're going to do better in school than someone that isn't in good condition. If they're an attorney, they're going to do better in front of the jury than their opponent. This was the gentleman over here on the left, on the right. His name is David Lawrence. He's the very first white-collar boxer we had at Gleason's gym. So, the fighters were able to compete, and for 19 years, once a month, I had an amateur show called White Collar Boxing. Very successful. People from around the world would call me up and say, when are you having your next show? I'm going to plan my vacation around your show. And they would come in and compete. So it was successful. It was an innovation, something new, something different. This is what you have to do with your confidence when you're ready. When you're moving along, things will change. Things always change. Be prepared to change with them. Okay, we've done 36 movies at Gleason's gym, full-length movies. 4 of the movies won Academy Awards. This was the first one. It was called Raging Bull. That's Robert De Niro. We also trained Robert De Niro for the part. He won the Academy Award. This is Hilary Swank. This is our most recent show that won an Academy Award. It's called $1 Million Baby. And also we trained Hilary Swank, and she won the Academy Award for it as well. De Niro was trained. That's Hilary Swank. Okay, we've had a number of females at Gleason's gym throughout the years. This woman, Jackie Tonawanda, was a professional fighter in 1970. But for the most part, women did not go into boxing gyms. They weren't allowed to fight or compete on an amateur level. So the gyms didn't have it. My partner, Ira Becker, was older than I was. He was a traditionalist. So he said, women don't belong in the boxing gym, and let's not bring them in. I was the younger partner. I respected what Ira told me, so we didn't have women. Until the 1980s, 1981, 1982, another recession came by, and we had trouble financially. So I went to Ira, and I said, Ira, let's let the women come into the gym and compete. We can use their money. When I go to the bank in the morning, they don't ask, is this women's money or is this men's money? It's just money. We can pay our bills with it. So we started a trial. This was the original girls that trained at the gym. We were in Manhattan at the time. There was only one bathroom and one changing area, so I had to close the gym 3 nights a week to the men, and we let the women come in. Women were always in Gleason's because of the many movies and parties and things that we did at the gym other than boxing. So when the women would come in, they would always ask if they could train, and it took a number of years for me to convince my partner, but once we did, it was very successful. This is one of the ladies that train at Gleason Gym. I'm going to tell you about her. It's attitude. This young lady graduated from Wisconsin, from Madison University, from University of Wisconsin in Madison, New York, Madison, Wisconsin. She wanted to be an artist, and her dream was to come to New York, which she thought was the right place to be. So she hitchhiked the day of her graduation from Wisconsin to New York City. It's quite a way. It's about 1,800 miles, but she came to New York. She had a great attitude. She lived with a lot of people because she couldn't afford her own apartment, so she had a lot of roommates. She worked a lot of jobs. She wanted to be an artist, and she was going to do whatever she had to do to be an artist. She's working along. She's an athlete, always eating properly, in good health, no history of health problems in her family, and she just wanted to be an artist. She wanted to come to New York and be an artist. All of a sudden, she gets a call from the doctor, and she has breast cancer. So this is a real jolt to her. Very, very much unexpected, because she's a health nut. She's a good athlete. She watches what she eats all the time. No history, no problems. But she fought through this. She says, I'm not going to let that get me down. Doctor says one thing, I'm going to be able to do what I want to do. So when she went through her radiation, she continued to train every single day. She didn't give up. She said, I want to train. I'm going to go in the gym and train. It didn't matter where she was getting radiation. She continued to paint. Gets over the cancer scare, continuing to paint, continuing to work out. 6 years later, she gets diagnosed with breast cancer in her other breast. This is a double whammy. I mean, this is really hard to take. But if you have deep conviction, you fight these things, you fight the problems, and you win all the time. So this young lady, again, went through her radiation, trained every day, stayed willing to work hard and become an artist. And she's an artist, a very successful artist today. She's represented by a very prestigious firm in New York called Woodward Gallery. And I get a lot of inspiration from this woman. She's my wife, she's here today, Mr. Ellen. But it shows you, again, if you have determination, if you have a dream, and you want your dream to be successful, stick with it. Don't let anybody get in your way. We have a lot of women that train at the gym now. Many women, many world champions. This is one of them, Alicia Ashley. She's one of the top 5 players in the world today. This woman, the Germans are no slouch with women boxers. They have some great women fighters. This lady, Regina Helmut, is also ranked as one of the top 5 fighters of all time, female fighters of all time. She's now retired. When she was fighting, she had a record of 54 wins and 1 loss. She's very successful. She's credited with boosting the popularity of women's boxing in Europe. In her final fight on television, 8 million television viewers tuned in to watch her fight. She was estimated to have 40% of the audience. And so females have now become very successful fighters. So you can, if you want to, again, make that money, it's not only Pacquiao, they can make a lot of money. Women can make a lot of money in the sport also. Okay, along the way, I started a foundation called Give a Kid a Dream. We're making a little bit of money in the sport of boxing. It was very successful. We felt that it was time to give back to the community. So we have a foundation which is a charity, a recognized charity for kids of the ages of 8 to 18 years of age that are in some sort of trouble. They're usually referred to us by a counselor, a police officer, parole officer, could be a clergyman, could be a teacher, but someone, either the individual or the counselor feels that the discipline of boxing will help them, so we bring it into the program at no charge. That's what some of the kids look like. The stories behind the kids are amazing. There's a lot of success stories here, but the troubled kids that they go through, and their environment is terrible. So what they need is some attention. If you pay attention to them, they really can right their wrongs and become successful individuals. We're not looking for fighters. We're not looking for the next Mike Tyson. We're just looking to help the kids. And many of them have become good, productive citizens. We have another quote here from Muhammad Ali, and it's a quote that is very important. Okay, life is like a boxing match. Defeat is declared not when you fall, but when you refuse to stand up again. And think about what he's saying here. It's important. It's important what you do in life. Okay? Don't be defeated. If you want to stand up, every time you're knocked down, find the other door, stand up. You can be a successful person no matter what you do. Don't take no for an answer. In a lot of ways, boxing is a microcosm of society. It's gritty, it's tough, it's a melting pot. It's characterized by openness and acceptance for all people, with all dreams. These people are like you. Just like you. They want to be a great athlete, they want to be a great businessman, a great entrepreneur. They're willing to work hard and sacrifice. All you have to do. Work hard, have a dream, and sacrifice. Don't take no for an answer. Stick with what you want to do. The ultimate key for great leadership in the 21st century is in your mind. In your mind. Only you can determine how far you're going to go and what you're going to accomplish. Do not be afraid to take the first step. The only limitations are the ones you place on yourself. We're talking about motivation. What is motivation? Is it the same for a student as it is for an athlete? No. Everybody's motivation is different. But the end result is the same. The end result is success. If you're motivated, you know what to do, you stick with your dreams. Doesn't matter what profession you're going to go in. Doesn't matter whether you're an athlete, you stay in academia. Doesn't matter what you're going to do. Be motivated, stick with your wishes, and you'll be successful. Motivation will keep you in school studying. It'll keep you in the gym training. It'll keep you in the workplace until you find out what you're looking for. I've talked about several individuals and their successes. I've talked about the success of the gym. It's all the same. Every one of the stories are the same. 2 weeks ago, November 2nd, we had the marathon in New York City. 50,000 runners were signed up. Another 3,000 or 4,000 were unofficial, but they ran also. And our public television did a lot of human interest stories about the individuals. They're all motivated. They all had a reason to run. Over 50,000 people, they all had a desire to run. Maybe it was an illness that they were coming over, maybe it was a loved one that they were running for, but they had a reason. And they were able to run a marathon. A marathon is a long way. It's a difficult thing to do. But they were motivated, and they all won. They didn't all come in first place, but they all matched their own personal goals. And they're winners, because they wanted to be winners. I cannot motivate you. I can only show you that motivation helps. Motivation works. You have to motivate yourself. The great entrepreneur is not made in the university. The great entrepreneur is something they have deep inside of you. You have a dream, you have a vision. Education and will are necessary, but the will is more important than the education. When one door closes, go to the next door. There's a quote I have at Gleason that's written on my wall. Now, whoever has courage and a strong and collected spirit in his breast, let him come forward, lace on the gloves, and put up his hands. That's the motto that we live on at the gym, and it's the motto that if you absorb it and take it in, you can live on and you can be successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this really impressive and authentic and visionary and future-oriented lesson about the dimensions of leadership and dimensions of motivation and his personal stories. And you cannot have leadership only in a theoretical academic way, you have leadership in the practical way. And this is the practical life. And there's a lot of parallels from leadership to athletics and in this case to boxing. And I have been in Gleason's gym and I have felt this atmosphere of motivation during my examination I have made in Gleason's gym as a boxing trainer. So I have felt this and I am agreeing totally with your messages to you as the students of leadership in the financial industry. Now we have the chance to have some questions to Bruce Silverglade. Have you questions? Then please ask Bruce Silverglade. He is here today. And so, what are your recommendations or contributions or questions? Here's a question. Please let me know.
Yeah, I would say thank you, sir, for explaining the history of the company. I'm sure you've met some big shots over there during your years there. I was thinking if you could give an example of situations where you really needed your leading skills. Because I think maybe today, I don't know if you really interact with your employees. I'm sure you do, but I still, like missed some kind of, reflections on how to lead people.
Well, I do interact with my employees. You cannot have a successful business unless you have good employees that are loyal to you and appreciate you as a leader, as their boss. Employees are you. They're an extension of you. Okay, if you're not there, they answer the phone. They speak to customers. Again, no matter what your field, whether it's law, whether it's academia, whatever it might be, you'll have employees. You have to be good to your employees. You have to interact with them. You have to let them know that you feel how they feel. You have to be good to them financially, but also in spirit. They have to know that you appreciate what they do. So a good leader has to interact with your employees. And to have a successful business, you have to have good employees. One example that comes up when I use leadership skills, it's a boxing gym, so there's a lot of tempers that are there. I have over 1,000 members, and I have 84 trainers and some employees. So there's always a lot of people there. And like your own family, with your spouses or your parents, every once in a while you get mad at them. You still love them, but you get mad at them. And if a fight breaks out in the gym, I have to be there to calm it down. And what I have found as a leader is that when two people are arguing, you can't talk sense into them. They're not listening to you. Okay, they're only interested in what they want to say to the person they're arguing with. So the best thing you do is separate them and then have them see you the following day. Go over the facts, but let them calm down. Don't let them say something to you in anger that you're going to have to react to. Let them calm down. But that's being a leader. You know how to handle situations when they arise.
But how do you let them to calm down? How? By what means?
Well, it's every situation is a little different. Okay, some are a little more violent than others. And when I say violent, I'm not talking about guns and knives. I'm talking about two people that are arguing. If two people are in the ring and they're sparring with one another, and the bell rings, and somebody thinks he got hit after the bell, or he got hit low, his temper might flare. So you have to bring them down. You have to calm them down. You separate them. And you do that, not me alone, I have other people that help me separate them. You make them stay away from one another. You call them in, you speak to each person individually, find out what their feeling is, and let them realize that the key to the argument is really silly. Whatever the problem is, it's silly. And a conversation will resolve it. Okay, so you let them calm down. When they don't want to start yelling at the person, they calm down, they think about it for a minute, and then they're apologetic. If you ever were at school and there was a fight in the schoolyard, everybody gets around and they're excited and yelling and screaming. After the two people get done fighting, they usually hug and make up afterwards. That's how it is in the gym.
And what do you think? Whom is too easy to lead? Women or men? I mean, for example, I personally think that men are easier to lead than women.
I disagree with you.
I just want to know what I put. I think that a man can lead women and can lead men, but a woman can only lead men.
Well, there were for many years, as I said, that we had no women in the gym at all. When we brought women in, they were completely different. The training of the women was different. A woman would come into the gym and looked at boxing as a challenge. They usually had high educations. They usually had good positions. And they came into the gym not to come out of poverty, but to learn the sport. And they would say, teach me how to box. I don't know how to box. And it was very easy to take the woman and show them how to box, from step one all the way up. Every man that comes into the gym, whether he wants to be a fighter or he's just in there for training, every man is macho and thinks they know how to fight, or thinks they're tough. And so it takes a long time to get rid of their bad habits and then start training them. But the women train harder than the men. The women are more dedicated than the men, and they do a much better job for the most part than the men do.
You said that you worked at Sears as a manager for 16 years. So if you had the chance, or do you think that your experience at Sears helped you in becoming an owner of Gleason's Gym? And if you could have left that job earlier, if you had the chance to leave that job earlier, would you have?
Yes. The position that I had at Sears was completely unrelated, a different type of industry than the boxing gym. And I wish I had gone into boxing and the sports field earlier. When I worked for Sears, I did learn things. I learned things about management. One of the things is what I talked about earlier about arguments with people. When I had two employees that would work for me, and they would get into an argument, I would have to bring them into the office, calm them down, make sure that we didn't further the argument in my office, because if someone is an employee and they made some disparaging comments to me and I'm their boss, then I have to react to it. And so it was easier to learn that people aren't paying attention to you during an argument. So let them calm down, speak to them the next day. As far as Sears is concerned, it was a very good income, and it was working for somebody else, and so I had benefits. But I was unhappy. So I would say that every single person in here, do not work for a corporation, work for yourselves. You'll be happier, you'll make more money, you'll have your own hours, and you'll do your own thing. So if it's at all possible, work for yourself.
Please? Yeah. How do you motivate yourself? I guess you have very long days, going to bed pretty late and staying, waking up pretty early. So how do you motivate yourself for everyday life, giving 100% every day?
It's very, very easy. I do something that I love. Okay, I get up at 4 a.m. every morning when I'm in New York. I open the gym at 5 a.m. and the gym is open until 10 p.m. and I usually stay there till 12 or 14 hours, till 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening. The time goes very fast, and it's because I love what I do. I meet people, I meet professors that come in, I meet actors and actresses, obviously I meet athletes that come in, but it's a very interesting job, and it's a place that I want to be. It's a fun place to be. My wife trains there, so I see her when she's at the gym training, and she goes to her studio and does her training. And the deal that I have with my wife, as her orders, is that I have to go home for dinner. Okay, I have to be home with her, and at least spend the evening and have dinner with her. And so I make a point of certainly doing that. But the long hours at the gym, they're nothing. I would spend more hours there if I could.
Any more questions?
I have one. First of all, before I came to my question, thank you very much for a great presentation. It was really cool. I enjoyed it very well. Thanks also for that possibility. And my question is also related to motivation. But the motivation will probably also related a bit to your leadership skills. And that question came from my daily work actually, so what I'm doing. And I have every time travels to motivate the people to get anything I need without providing anything. So I can influence the people, but I need the information. So how do you actually influence and motivate the people to collaborate with you, actually without any interest from the other side? So I know that I need the information, which I was requested to provide by, I don't know, whatever, the data. But how do you motivate, how do you collaborate with such people?
I find it very easy. You have to be fair. That's the whole thing. Be fair with your employees. Don't steal their idea. Don't make them come to you and give the idea, then you run to the next level and use it as your own. Be fair with your employees. Give back to your employees whatever you can give back to them. Let them know that you appreciate what they're doing. Let them know how valuable they are to you and to you going to the next step. If you're fair with a person and you don't treat people differently, don't treat this person as your favorite, he's your pet, and this person isn't. You have to be fair with your employees. If you're fair with them, they'll be good to you.
So the fairness and honestly is probably the most important. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Any additional questions? So, please.
I have seen some leaders, yes, in everyday life, yes, and what I see that there are people who are leading, but they are indifferent in what is going on. They are not interested, and it still works. It still works. And but we are not like owners of the company. We just working for a company. So, but how can you explain such kinds of leaders that actually we are not doing what we are expected to do? What kind of leaders are they? And we have no morals, nothing. Yes. And you can't go to them, you can't talk to them. We just like like ignore in most cases, yes. And it works very well for them.
Well, it doesn't, because you or the people you're talking about are unmotivated. You're unhappy. You're not going to go the extra mile to that person. Same thing. So everybody has their own management style, has their own leadership style. My leadership style is I like to work with people. I like people. I like to have a response back and forth with people, and I like people to appreciate what I do for them. If you have a management style where you're indifferent, your employees will stay there if they need the employment. Okay? If they need the income, they're going to be there. Okay? But they're not motivated to help to make things go to the next level. That might not be true in all cases, but I think in the majority of the cases, if your employees aren't on your side, if they're not there to help, to make your business grow and be better, then you're in trouble. You're not going to have a very successful company.
but it is kind of middle stage.
Well,
So it is, you know it, and you actually can't go, for example, you like an ordinary employee can go to the leader of this middle stage here.
I come from exactly what you're talking about. When I was with Sears Roebuck Company, I was in middle management. They had 800 stores, and I ran one of their stores, one of the smaller stores. But I was in middle management. I was never going to be the CEO of the company. And I was disgruntled. I was unhappy. I had a good income. I had good benefits, and I had a lot of people, particularly women, working for me. So I was unhappy. I was unmotivated. So it got to the point, after 16 years, in the beginning, you're new to the company, you want to be successful, you want to do whatever you can. But you get to a point where, I'm not going anywhere. The work would be too hard. I didn't quit because I needed the income, I had a family. But I waited for the opportunity. When the opportunity came, then I moved on. And I think I was a good manager for Sears, so I think it was Sears' loss that they met somebody of my caliber and they let me go. And it's because management, upper management, wasn't good to me. Okay, they didn't appreciate, I didn't feel they appreciated what I was doing. And that's motivation. And so the upper management has to find a way to motivate middle management and lower employees so that they work hard for it.
I just think this middle management in this company is just placed in the wrong place. And if you go, you can't go to the upper management and say about this middle management that he's bad, because he will let the position he has will be left to him, How can you do these things, yes?
Well, you can. Change is possible. You can do anything else. What you have to decide is the feeling that you have in your stomach of not feeling good, not being happy with management, not wanting to go to work. Is that worth more than the salary you're paying you? Or can you go to the upper management, go bypass this person, make the point, and possibly you'll be successful and they'll reward you, or maybe they'll say no. We don't want somebody that goes over management. And then you have to find a new position. But maybe you'll find a better position. Maybe you'll be happy. Happiness is more important.
We are talking about values, about moral, but what I see in everyday life is that there is no values, there is no moral.
There are.
There is, it is mine.
Okay, so Eddie, we have to close because others are waiting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Together, please, who will come here. We want to make a photo together with our guest from New York City. And I have to give him the certification.